Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into leveling up your communication by exploring the evolution of the verb. Now, you might be thinking verbs are just basic grammar you learned back in grade school, right? Something you don't really need to think about anymore. Well, actually, they're so much more than that. They are the dynamic, ever-evolving engines that drive literally all of our communication. Let's get started. Think about it like this. Every single complete sentence you have ever spoken, written, or read hides a secret engine right in plain sight. Do you know what it is? The answer, of course, is the verb. In this explainer, we're going to unlock the secret to mastering complete, powerful sentences by fully understanding how this engine works, from the simplest gears all the way to the most advanced mechanics.
Okay, let's dive right into this and lay down our foundation. Before we can run, we've got to walk. So what actually is a verb? By definition, it's a word that shows an action or a state of being. It's the core word that tells us exactly what the subject of our sentence is doing, or simply how it exists in the world. Without it, your sentence is honestly just a lifeless pile of nouns waiting for a spark.
Let's look at the action side of things first. Our sources show that actions are basically categorized into two distinct types. First up, we have physical actions. These are the ones you can clearly observe, the sweat and the movement. Think of words like run, jump, eat, sleep, write, or sing. When we say, the dog runs across the yard, the physical action is undeniable. But wait, verbs also cover mental actions. These happen silently, entirely inside your head. Think, believe, understand, guess. When you say, she believes in ghosts, there is absolutely no physical movement, but an incredibly powerful mental action is taking place.
But verbs don't always mean movement. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between those action verbs we just talked about, like the dog runs, against what we call state of being verbs, or linking verbs. These verbs don't show any action at all. Instead, they act like a giant equal sign, linking the subject directly to a description. The most common ones are variations of the verb to be, like am, is, and are. So when you say, I am happy, or he is a doctor, the verbs am and is are quietly doing all the heavy lifting to connect the person to their current state of existence.
Now, before we move to the next level, we have to look at this basic rule of the road, subject-verb agreement. In the present tense, your verb absolutely must match your subject. For I, you, we, or they, you just use the base form of the word. We run. Super simple. But when your subject is third-person singular, meaning he, she, or it, you usually have to tack on an S to the end of the action verb. It becomes he runs. It's a tiny grammatical shift, but it is the absolute bedrock of proper sentence structure.
All right, it's time for a quick practice exercise to test your foundational knowledge. Take a look at these three sentences and see if you can actively identify the verb and its type. Number 1, the children play in the park. Number 2, my teacher is very smart. Number 3, we eat pizza on Fridays. Got 'em? Okay, play is a physical action. Is a state of being, linking the teacher to the concept of being smart. And eat is a physical action verb. If you nailed those, you are definitely ready to advance.
Awesome. Level 2 unlocked, mastering time and tenses. Let's keep it moving.
Let's move to the next concept and see how this builds. Now that we know basic verb forms, let's look at their ability to time travel. Yes, time travel. Verbs actually shapeshift to anchor us in exact moments of time across our three basic tenses. If an action happened before now, we're operating in the past tense. You'd say walked or went. If it's happening right now or happens regularly, we use the present tense, walk. And if it's going to happen later, we project into the future tense by adding a little helper word, making it will walk. The verb totally morphs to tell your listener exactly when reality is taking place.
But actually, the past tense has a few traps we need to be aware of. Regular past tense verbs are polite. They follow a very predictable rule. You simply add an ed to the end of the word. Walk reliably becomes walked. Jump becomes jumped. Easy, right? But then we have irregular past tense verbs. Fun fact, the most commonly used verbs in the English language are almost all irregular. These verbs are total rebels. They break all the rules entirely. Go doesn't become goed. It dramatically morphs into went. Eat becomes ate. Because they don't follow any logical pattern, there's no shortcut here. You just have to commit them to memory.
Level 3 unlocked, the power of helper verbs. Things are getting interesting now.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how sometimes a main verb needs a little bit of assistance. A tiny helper word can completely change the main verb's function and the entire intent of the sentence. Or, as grammarians officially like to call them, auxiliary verbs. The most common helpers we use are forms of be, do, and have. Want to show a continuous ongoing action? Add is to get she is running. Want to make a sentence strictly negative? The helper does steps in. He does not like apples. Need to ask a question? Have jumps to the front of the line. Have you finished your homework? The main verb remains, but the helper gives it a completely new superpower.
Here we go. Level 4 unlocked, advanced moves, and directing action.
This is where we separate casual speakers from intentional, really powerful communicators. Let's clearly contrast transitive versus intransitive verbs. Transitive verbs demand a receiver. They absolutely require a direct object to transfer their action onto for the sentence to make any sense. Look at the phrase, she bought a car. If you just say, she bought, the listener is left hanging. Bought what? The sentence desperately needs a car to be complete. Intransitive verbs, on the other hand, are highly independent. They stand perfectly well alone. The baby slept. Boom. Complete thought. The baby didn't sleep something. The action is entirely self-contained.
But hey, don't get too comfortable because context changes everything. Some verbs are incredibly flexible gymnasts that can switch categories depending entirely on the sentence they happen to live in. If you say, I read a book, read is acting as a transitive verb because a book is actively receiving the action. But if someone asks what your hobbies are and you just say, I read, the word read suddenly functions as an intransitive verb. It's the exact same word playing two completely different roles based solely on the context. How cool is that?
Almost at the top, level 5 unlocked, shifting focus with voice.
Voice describes the relationship between the verb and the subject, and it ultimately determines the strength and focus of your sentence. So the crucial point here is understanding the difference between active versus passive voice. In active voice, the subject does the action. The chef cooked the meal. The chef is the star, actively doing the work. It's direct, punchy, and generally the strongest way to write. In passive voice, the subject receives the action. The meal was cooked by the chef. We form this using a to-be verb plus a past participle. Notice how the focus totally shifts away from the chef and onto the object, the meal. Active voice is almost always your best choice for clarity, for sure, but passive voice is a clever strategic tool when you deliberately want to emphasize the receiver of the action.
We made it to the final boss level. Ultimate mastery, verbs in disguise.
Just when you thought you had verbs perfectly boxed in as action words and linking words, they pull a fast one on you. These sneaky words are called verbals. They are words formed directly from verbs, but they magically put on a disguise to act as completely different parts of speech. First, we have gerunds. They end in ing and act purely as a noun. Swimming is great exercise. Swimming is technically an action, but here it's the thing or concept we're talking about. Next are participles. These act as adjectives to modify a noun. The crying baby needed milk. Crying describes the baby. Finally, infinitives. This is the word to plus a verb acting as a noun, adjective, or adverb. I want to travel. To travel is the thing I want. They are absolutely incredible shapeshifters, right?
Wow, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Now that you've unlocked the secrets of the sentence engine, from understanding basic physical actions all the way to deploying disguised verbals and shifting your sentence's voice, you have some incredible tools at your disposal. The engine is fully built, and it's yours to command. So ask yourself, are your sentences actively driving your ideas forward, or are they just idling in neutral? Keep exploring and use these tools to make your communication truly unstoppable. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.